The initial scorn, flying milk bottles. The year was 1943. Above the churning chaos of the Western Front, at a staggering 27,000 feet, the air was thin, cold, and often deadly. On April 8th of that year, a German Luftwaffe pilot, Hauptmann Hermann Hermansen, settled into his cockpit, scanning the vast expanse of sky. He saw them, a formation of new American fighters, their silver fuselages glinting against the pale spring sun. A sneer, cold and dismissive, touched Hermansen's lips. These were the P-47 Thunderbolts, the so-called jug, or, as his comrades often scoffed, flying milk bottles. To the seasoned German aviators, masters of their sleek, agile Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, the P-47 was an object of mild amusement, almost pity. Its sheer bulk was undeniable. It was a heavyweight, a veritable monster of metal, dwarfing its contemporaries. Compared to the nimble German interceptors, designed for quick dogfights, the Thunderbolt looked, quite frankly, clumsy. Its immense radial engine, though powerful, contributed to an appearance that suggested sluggishness, not speed or grace. They watched it, this colossal American creation, and saw not a threat, but a target. They saw an aircraft that defied the conventional wisdom of aerial combat, lightweight, maneuverable, and delicate. The P-47 was none of these. They often joked about its unwieldy size, its apparent lack of agility in the crucial arena of close-quarters dogfighting. These American jugs, they believed, were slow to climb, ponderous to turn, and ripe for the picking. What Hermansen, and indeed much of the Luftwaffe High Command, failed to grasp in those nascent days of the P-47's operational debut was that this perceived weakness was, in fact, its greatest strength. They scoffed, they laughed, they dismissed it as an industrial brute, a testament to American over-engineering rather than aerial prowess. But their laughter, born of a misplaced confidence, would soon be silenced. 2. A monster by design, Kartveli's vision. The German pilot's mockery, however, was born of a profound misunderstanding of the P-47's very genesis. They saw an ungainly behemoth. Its creator, the brilliant Georgian-American aeronautical engineer Alexander Kartveli, saw a monster. Kartveli harbored no illusions of designing a graceful aerial ballet dancer. His vision for the P-47 Thunderbolt, codenamed AP-10 at Republic Aviation, was a radical departure from the prevailing design philosophy of the era, which favored lightweight, highly agile fighters. Instead, Kartveli set out to build an aircraft that prioritized brute force, overwhelming firepower, and unyielding structural integrity. He began with the engine, the heart of any fighter. At its core lay the colossal Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, a radial engine that, even in its earliest iterations, pumped out over 2,000 horsepower. To manage the immense cooling requirements and to unlock its full potential at high altitudes, Kartveli incorporated a complex turbo supercharger system. This engineering marvel was so large, it necessitated routing ducts and intercoolers all the way from the front engine to a turbine unit located in the rear fuselage, requiring the P-47 to be built around this system rather than the other way around. This ingenious, albeit space-consuming, solution gave the Thunderbolt its distinctive deep belly and robust frame. But power alone was not enough. Kartveli understood the brutal realities of air combat. He envisioned a fighter that could not just reach the enemy, but utterly obliterate it. The P-47 carried not 2, not 4, but 8 Browning M2.50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing. This unprecedented armament could unleash a devastating torrent of lead, a wall of steel, capable of tearing apart any enemy aircraft in mere seconds. This was a fighter designed to hit hard and survive harder. Its sheer size and robust construction were not accidental flaws, but deliberate choices, built to withstand the kind of damage that would send lesser aircraft spiraling to their doom. Kartveli was building a flying tank, an aerial battering ram, designed to absorb punishment and dish it out in spades. The P-47, in Kartveli's hands, was not just an aircraft. It was a testament to a philosophy that prioritized resilience and raw destructive power above all else. 3. Taming the Beast, training the Thunderbolt pilots. The roar of the P-47's immense Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp engine was a symphony of raw power, But for the young American pilots tasked with taming this mechanical beast, it was often a terrifying cacophony. Before the Thunderbolt could truly become the scourge of the Luftwaffe, it first had to prove itself to its own crews, and the early days of training were fraught with peril. This wasn't a sleek, agile fighter designed for dogfights. It was a flying tank, a behemoth built around its massive engine and heavy armament. Its sheer weight and the immense torque generated by its 2,000 horsepower engine, later boosted to over 2,500 HP, made it notoriously difficult to handle, particularly during takeoff and landing. The controls were heavy, demanding brute strength and precise touch, and the propeller's powerful gyroscopic effect could throw an inexperienced pilot into a violent, irrecoverable spin. The result was a grim tally of accidents. Training fields across the United States and Britain bore silent witness to the P-47's unforgiving nature, with scores of young men losing their lives before ever seeing combat. Many initially viewed the Thunderbolt as a clumsy, ill-tempered brute, a jug that seemed determined to shake itself apart or simply fall out of the sky. Its massive radial engine blocked much of the forward visibility, and its rapid stall characteristics at high angles of attack were a constant threat. Yet, for those who persevered, for the pilots who pushed past the initial frustration and fear, a profound revelation awaited. They began to understand that the P-47 wasn't meant to be flown like other fighters. It demanded a different kind of respect, a different set of tactics. They discovered its incredible speed in a dive, its unmatched ability to absorb punishment and keep flying, and its unparalleled performance at high altitudes, qualities that would soon turn derision into dread for their adversaries. The Thunderbolt wasn't just a fighter, it was an extension of American industrial might, a rugged, powerful platform that, once mastered, became an almost indestructible weapon. 4. First encounters, underestimated but resilient. With its unique blend of raw power and robust construction, the P-47 Thunderbolt, now expertly guided by its American pilots, began its grim work over the European theater. But as these massive fighters roared into combat during early 1943, the seasoned veterans of the Luftwaffe, who had dominated the skies for years, greeted them with a mixture of professional curiosity and a heavy dose of outright contempt. In the swirling chaos of the first aerial engagements, the P-47 initially struggled. Its sheer weight and colossal engine, while providing unmatched dive speed and high-altitude performance, made it less agile in the close-quarter turning dogfights preferred by the nimbler German Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s. Luftwaffe pilots, adept at exploiting every weakness, quickly observed the Thunderbolt's wide turning radius. They would often remark, with a dismissive wave, that these American newcomers were nothing more than fliegende Milchkannen, flying milk bottles, or, even more derisively, Schlachtwehe, mere slaughter fodder. They were heavy, ungainly targets, seemingly built to be shot down. But, as weeks turned into months, a puzzling and unsettling pattern began to emerge. These milk bottles, though often riddled with bullet holes and torn by cannon fire, weren't falling out of the sky with the expected regularity. A German ace, after riddling a P-47 with rounds, might watch in disbelief as the damaged American fighter, trailing smoke and fluids, stubbornly continued its flight, often managing to disengage and return to base. Tales began to circulate among the German ranks. A Thunderbolt with half its wing shattered, another with its engine cowling shredded, yet still sputtering its way homeward. The initial scorn, born of the P-47's perceived clumsiness, began to give way to a flicker of bewilderment, then a grudging acknowledgement of its extraordinary resilience. This was no ordinary fighter. It was an iron brute, a beast that refused to die. The seeds of doubt were sown, hinting at the profound terror this slaughter fodder would soon inflict. First encounters, underestimated but resilient. With its unique blend of raw power and robust construction, the P-47 Thunderbolt, now expertly guided by its American pilots, began its grim work over the European theater.
But as these massive fighters roared into combat during early 1943, the seasoned veterans of the Luftwaffe, who had dominated the skies for years, greeted them with a mixture of professional curiosity and a heavy dose of outright contempt. In the swirling chaos of the first aerial engagements, the P-47 initially struggled. Its sheer weight and colossal engine, while providing unmatched dive speed and high-altitude performance, made it less agile in the close-quarter turning dogfights preferred by the nimbler German Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s. Luftwaffe pilots, adept at exploiting every weakness, quickly observed the Thunderbolt's wide turning radius. They would often remark, with a dismissive wave, that these American newcomers were nothing more than fliegende Milchkannen, flying milk bottles, or, even more derisively, Schlachtwehr, mere slaughter fodder. They were heavy, ungainly targets, seemingly built to be shot down. But, as weeks turned into months, a puzzling and unsettling pattern began to emerge. These milk bottles, though often riddled with bullet holes and torn by cannon fodder, weren't falling out of the sky with the expected regularity. A German ace, after riddling a P-47 with rounds, might watch in disbelief as the damaged American fighter, trailing smoke and fluids, stubbornly continued its flight, often managing to disengage and return to base. Tales began to circulate among the German ranks. A Thunderbolt with half its wing shattered, another with its engine cowling shredded, yet still sputtering its way homeward. The initial scorn, born of the P-47's perceived clumsiness, began to give way to a flicker of bewilderment, then a grudging acknowledgement of its extraordinary resilience. This was no ordinary fighter. It was an iron brute, a beast that refused to die. The seeds of doubt were sown, hinting at the profound terror this slaughter fodder would soon inflict.
5. The Legend of Robert Johnson, Unyielding Durability. By June of 1943, the P-47, still navigating its early, often challenging combat debut, faced skeptics on both sides. Yet it was during this pivotal month that a single pilot and his seemingly indestructible machine would forever alter perceptions. First Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a young but determined American aviator, found himself embroiled in a ferocious dogfight over Europe. His P-47 Thunderbolt, flying alongside others, was engaged by a relentless swarm of German Focke-Wulf F-190s. The aerial ballet was brutal, a dizzying exchange of tracer fire and desperate maneuvers. Suddenly, Johnson's Thunderbolt took a catastrophic hit. A German cannon shell exploded into his wing, followed by a torrent of machine gun rounds that ripped through his fuselage, his cockpit, and even his instrument panel. The damage was horrific. Dozens of cannon and machine gun hits tore through the aircraft, leaving gaping holes and shredding vital components. Johnson himself was wounded, his canopy shattered, and the cockpit filled with smoke and freezing air. Any other fighter, a Messerschmitt Bf-109 or an F-190, would have disintegrated or plunged from the sky in a flaming death spiral. But the P-47, a behemoth of American industrial might, defied all logic. Despite the devastation, despite the gaping wounds in its metal skin, Johnson's P-47 Thunderbolt somehow remained airborne. With astonishing tenacity, the massive radial engine, though sputtering, continued to churn, powering the heavily damaged airframe through the sky. He limped back across enemy lines, a ghost of an aircraft, finally bringing his mangled Thunderbolt down for a miraculous landing at his base. The sight of Johnson's plane, riddled with over 200 bullet and cannon shell holes, shocked everyone who saw it. Allied ground crews were dumbfounded, their disbelief quickly turning to awe at the sheer resilience of their jug. But the impact wasn't confined to the Allied side. Reports of the incident filtered through German intelligence, spreading a chilling realization among Luftwaffe pilots. What they had once derided as a clumsy, vulnerable flying milk bottle had just proven itself to be an unyielding, almost invincible flying tank. This wasn't just survival.
This was a stark, undeniable demonstration of the Thunderbolt's unparalleled structural integrity and resilience, a testament to American engineering that began to rewrite the rules of aerial combat. 6. Mastering the skies, the boom and zoom doctrine. The Thunderbolt's incredible resilience, its ability to absorb punishment and still return home, was a revelation. But survival alone wasn't victory. The initial encounters had proven the P-47 was no nimble dogfighter. Its bulk, a source of its strength, also made it sluggish in tight turns, often leaving pilots frustrated and vulnerable in traditional engagements. German pilots, still often scoffing at its flying milk bottle appearance, believed they held the advantage in a turning fight. They were right, to a point. But American pilots, ever adaptive and ingenious, began to look beyond the conventional. They saw not a flaw in the P-47's design, but a set of unique characteristics waiting to be exploited. They recognized the immense power of their Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, the secret to its unparalleled performance at high altitudes thanks to its sophisticated turbosupercharger, and its extraordinary structural integrity, which allowed for breathtakingly fast dives. These weren't weaknesses. They were the very foundation of a new doctrine, boom and zoom.
This wasn't about elegant aerial ballet. It was about raw, brutal physics. A boom and zoom attack began with the P-47 pilot climbing to extreme altitudes, often far above the German fighters. Once in position, they would spot their prey below, then plummet down in a near-vertical dive, building immense speed. The P-47, with its heavy frame, became an unstoppable projectile, accelerating to speeds that lighter German fighters simply could not match without tearing themselves apart. As they closed the distance, the 850 caliber machine guns would open fire, unleashing a devastating torrent of lead. Then, using the incredible speed gained from the dive, the Thunderbolt would either zoom back up to altitude, regaining its advantageous position for another attack, or disengage completely, leaving bewildered German pilots grappling with an enemy that struck like lightning and vanished just as swiftly. This tactic transformed the flying milk bottle into a terrifying predator, dictating the terms of engagement and systematically overwhelming the vaunted Luftwaffe in their own skies. 7. The Wall of Lead, unleashing 850 caliber guns. While the P-47's inherent durability and the innovative boom and zoom tactics began to reshape the aerial battlefield, there was a more visceral, terrifying truth waiting for any German pilot who dared to engage a Thunderbolt. It wasn't just how the P-47 fought, but what it brought to the fight. Underneath its bulky yet incredibly resilient frame, the P-47 housed a fearsome arsenal: 8 50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns. These were not mere standard armament. They were instruments of utter destruction, mounted 4 to each wing, each capable of unleashing a storm of lead. Imagine the terrifying moment of being caught in the sights of a P-47. As the pilot pressed the trigger, a torrent of lead, traveling at hundreds of miles per second, erupted from the wings. It wasn't a scattered spray. It was a concentrated, incandescent wall of lead, a solid sheet of destruction, virtually impossible to evade once locked in. Each 50 caliber round, with its immense kinetic energy, was capable of ripping through armor plating, shattering structural components, and igniting fuel tanks. With 8 of these firing simultaneously, spewing hundreds of rounds per second, an enemy fighter could be transformed from a sleek, agile machine into a mangled, flaming wreck in mere seconds. Wings could shear off, engines could explode, and cockpits could become a storm of shrapnel and fire. For the German pilots, who often relied on fewer, heavier cannons or a mix of lighter machine guns, the sheer volume and destructive power of the P-47's armament was a brutal awakening. Their initial sneers at the Jug's appearance quickly evaporated, replaced by the chilling understanding that to be caught in its firing line was almost certainly a death sentence. The laughter died, replaced by a desperate scramble for survival against a foe that could literally tear them apart from the sky. This wasn't just combat.
It was an industrial-scale annihilation, a testament to American manufacturing might weaponized for aerial dominance. 8. Turning the tide, Schweinfurt and Regensburg. The industrial-scale annihilation that P-47s unleashed in skirmishes was about to be put to the ultimate test on a grand strategic scale. August 1943. Deep within Germany lay the vital industrial heartlands, the ball-bearing factories of Schweinfurt and the aircraft production facilities of Regensburg. These were targets of immense strategic importance, guarded by the full might of the Luftwaffe, and reaching them would require unprecedented long-range escort. This was the moment for the Thunderbolts to prove its true mettle, not just as a fighter, but as a guardian of the bomber streams.
Fighter pilots, still largely confident in their agile Messerschmitts und Focke-Wulfs, anticipated easy pickings. Sie knew the P-47s could reach them, but their previous encounters led them to believe the American Uke was merely a cumbersome nuisance, easily outmaneuvered. But what unfolded over the skies of Germany on those fateful August days was a brutal, one-sided lesson in aerial combat superiority. As wave after wave of B-17 flying fortresses pressed towards their objectives, the P-47 escorts, often flying at the very edge of their operational range thanks to auxiliary drop tanks, met the eager German interceptors head-on. This was no longer about a pilot's individual skill in a dogfight, it was about raw power, devastating firepower, and the tactical brilliance of exploiting every advantage. The P-47s, employing their signature boom and zoom tactics, would dive from incredible altitudes, gaining immense speed, unleashing a torrent of 8,050 caliber machine gun rounds that could rip a Focke-Wulf 190 oder Messerschmitt Bf 190 zu shreds in seconds. The sheer destructive power of this concentrated fire was unlike anything German pilots had ever consistently faced. One moment, a German pilot might be lining up a shot on a bomber, confident in his prey. The next, he'd be engulfed in a hail of lead, his aircraft disintegrating around him, the victim of a P-47 that appeared almost out of nowhere, struck with terrifying velocity, and then climbed back to altitude to repeat the deadly ballet. The invincibility of the P-47, its ability to absorb severe battle damage and still return fire, only added to the growing dread. The raids of Schweinfurt and Regensburg, though costly for the bombers themselves, delivered a profound shock to the Luftwaffe. German fighter groups suffered crippling losses, disproportionately high compared to their earlier engagements. Der P-47 hat nicht nur protected seine Schützer, es hat systematisch demontiert die Interceptor Screen. Die Lachen der German pilots hat langsinns vernichtet. In its place war a chilling realization. The flying milk bottle had transformed in eine relentless high-altitude predator, a thunderbolt in jedem terrifizierenden Sinne des Worts. Diese August-Operationen markten a critical turning point, förmlich etablieren die P-47s Dominanz und signalisieren den Beginn des Ends für die Luftwaffes Air-Superiorität über dem Reich. The tide der Air War hat begonnen zu turn. 9. High-Altitude Dominance und die Fall von einem Ace. Als die aeriale Beutelschaft von Westeuropa zu immer mehr unerträglicher Höhen aufstieg, eine neue kritische Dimension von Air-Superiorität begann zu ermerken. Hier in den tristen, kalten Lufthafen über 25.000 Fuß, wo meiste Fightercrafts schwer vor Atem und Performance hatten, fand die P-47 Thunderbolt seine truhe Element. Sein massives Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp Engine, ein Behemoth generierend über 2000 PS, war entworfen für Dauerpower-Output in der rarifierten Atmosphäre. Ermöglichte dem Thunderbolt seine Schnelligkeit, Kletterrad und Manövrierbarkeit lange aufrecht zu erhalten, lang auch nachdem seine Anwender falterten. German Pilots, gewöhnt an ihre nimblen Messerschmitt Bf 190 und robusten Focke-Wulf Fw 190, dominierend an mittleren Höhen, fanden sich immer mehr ausgematscht in diesen oberen Regionen. Ihre Superschauber waren zwar effektiv, konnten aber nicht mit der robusten Ingenieursleistung und schieren Power des Thunderbolts an extremen Höhen kompetieren. Dies war nicht nur eine technische Disavantage, es war auch eine psychologische eine, fortzuzwingen auf Terms diktiert von den Amerikanern.
Am 8. Oktober 1943 wurde diese tragische Realität näher Nordhorn durchgeschlagen. Major Hans Philipp, einer der Luftwaffes meistdistinguierte Asse, ein Inhaber des Ritterkreuzes mit Oken und Schworz und gecredited mit über 200 Aerialerfolgen, scrambelte zu intercepten eine ankommende Formation von B-17 Flying Fortresses. Philipp leitete Jagdgeschwader 1 und hatte seine Aufgabe den Reich, eine Aufgabe, die er jahrelang mit unanschlagbarer Skill erfüllt hatte. Aber an diesem Tag waren die eskortierenden P-47 Thunderbolts nicht nur anwesend, sie operierten mit einer hochaltitudinalen Ferozität, die Philipp vielleicht unterschätzt hatte.
As Philipp engaged the bombers, he was intercepted by P-47s from the 56th Fighter Group. In the ensuing dogfight, fought at an altitude where his FW-190, for all its formidable qualities, was operating at a distinct disadvantage, Philipp found himself in a desperate struggle. His aircraft, designed for mid-altitude brawling, gasped for power and agility against the P-47s, which maintained their energy and speed with unnerving ease. Despite his immense experience and legendary skill, the inherent performance gap at such extreme heights proved insurmountable. Philipp's FW-190 was hit, spiraling out of control before he could bail out. The celebrated ace, a symbol of Luftwaffe prowess, perished. The loss of Major Hans Philipp sent a chill through the ranks of the Luftwaffe. It was a clear, brutal demonstration that the P-47 Thunderbolt, once mocked as a clumsy jug, was now a master of the high-altitude domain. This wasn't just another kill, it was the downing of a legend, a testament to the Thunderbolt's ability to not only contend with, but decisively defeat, the best the German Air Force had to offer, even when piloted by its most experienced veterans. The P-47's sustained performance at extreme altitudes wasn't merely a technical specification, it was a strategic weapon, systematically dismantling German air superiority and casting a long, terrifying shadow over the pilots who dared to challenge it in the thin, blue sky. 10. Evolution of a Predator, the P-47 D-22 and Paddleblade. Even as the P-47 Thunderbolt carved its fearsome reputation across the European skies, transforming German pilots' sneers into shudders of dread, the story of its dominance was far from complete. For the engineers and strategists behind the P-47 understood that in the crucible of aerial combat, stagnation was death. They relentlessly pursued perfection, ensuring that the Thunderbolt remained not just competitive, but overwhelmingly superior. January 1944 marked a pivotal moment in this continuous evolution, with the introduction of the P-47 D-22 variant. Its most distinctive and impactful feature was immediately visible: a new, broader Hamilton standard propeller, famously dubbed the Paddleblade. This wasn't merely an aesthetic change, it was a fundamental re-engineering of the aircraft's power delivery. The previous propeller, while capable, could not fully translate the raw, brutal force of the R2800 double wasp engine into optimal thrust. The wider, more aggressive blades of the Paddleblade propeller were designed to literally bite more deeply into the air, harnessing every ounce of the engine's immense horsepower. The impact on the Thunderbolt's performance was nothing short of revolutionary. Pilots immediately reported a dramatic improvement in climb rate, allowing the heavy fighter to claw its way to altitude with unprecedented speed. Crucially, its acceleration also saw a significant boost, providing pilots with a vital edge in energy management, a split-second advantage in a turning fight, or the ability to quickly disengage and re-engage. Any lingering performance advantages that German fighters might have possessed, particularly in initial climb or short bursts of acceleration at certain altitudes, were now effectively negated. The P-47, once perceived as a lumbering behemoth, now combined its legendary ruggedness and devastating firepower with a newfound agility and responsiveness across the entire flight envelope. The Paddleblade transformed the P-47 into an even more formidable predator, tightening the noose around the necks of the beleaguered Luftwaffe. 11. The ground attack juggernaut, from air superiority to close support. With the skies increasingly clear to formidable Luftwaffe opposition, the P-47 Thunderbolt, already a nightmare to German pilots, was now poised to unleash its full devastating potential upon the ground below. Its robust airframe, initially designed to withstand high-G maneuvers and battle damage,
proved equally adept at carrying a prodigious payload of destruction.
Far beyond its 8 deadly .50 caliber machine guns, the Thunderbolt could be armed with a terrifying array of ordnance, up to 2,500 pounds of bombs, ranging from general-purpose high explosives to fragmentation munitions designed to shred personnel and light vehicles. Soon, it would also wield high-velocity rockets, each capable of piercing the armor of even the heaviest German tanks. This transformation saw the P-47 evolve from a pure air superiority fighter into a ground attack juggernaut, a term whispered with dread among German ground forces. From the battlefields of Normandy to the depths of the Siegfried Line, the sight of a P-47 laden with external stores and hurtling towards them became a harbinger of indiscriminate destruction. Convoys supplying the front lines were annihilated, railway lines torn apart, bridges collapsed, and armored columns, once symbols of German might, were reduced to smoking wrecks by the Thunderbolt's precision strikes and overwhelming firepower. The P-47 had become an airborne wrecking ball, further cementing its terrifying reputation across every front. 12. D-Day and beyond. June 6, 1944. The world held its breath as the greatest amphibious invasion in history unfolded across the Normandy beaches. Waves of Allied troops, vulnerable and exposed, stormed the heavily fortified coastline, their very survival dependent on an uncontested sky above. It was in this crucible of destiny that the P-47 Thunderbolt, once a subject of German derision, ascended to its ultimate, indispensable role. For hours before the first landing craft touched sand, and for weeks thereafter, the Thunderbolts were an omnipresent, watchful force. They established an air umbrella so dense, so relentless, that it rendered any significant intervention by the crippled Luftwaffe virtually impossible. Imagine the sheer audacity, thousands of ships, tens of thousands of men, all converging on a hostile shore, yet protected by a steel canopy woven by the roaring engines and formidable firepower of the P-47s. These weren't just random patrols. This was a meticulously orchestrated symphony of air power. From dawn till dusk, P-47s maintained continuous patrols, sweeping the skies for any sign of German aircraft attempting to reach the beachheads. Their speed of altitude, their robust construction, and above all, their devastating armament of 8 50 caliber machine guns meant that any German fighter that dared to challenge them was met with a storm of lead it could not hope to survive. Luftwaffe attempts, often flown by inexperienced pilots in dwindling numbers of aircraft, were suicidal endeavors. They were swatted from the sky with brutal efficiency, their formations shattered before they could even glimpse the Allied armada below. But the Thunderbolt's role wasn't merely defensive. As the ground battle raged, the P-47s descended from their lofty patrols to become the grim reapers of the land. Any German armored column daring to move towards the front, any artillery battery shelling the beachheads, any troop concentration attempting a counterattack, found itself under the immediate, devastating scrutiny of the jugs. Their bombs and rockets, precise and powerful, tore apart supply lines, silenced gun emplacements, and broke the morale of defending forces. From the air, the P-47s systematically dismantled the German capacity to resist, turning the tide of ground combat with every strafing run and bomb drop. The skies over Normandy, which should have been a contested battleground, became a domain utterly dominated by the Allies, largely thanks to the tireless efforts of the P-47 pilots. Their patrols ensured that the German High Command could not even gain basic reconnaissance of the unfolding invasion, let alone launch effective air attacks. The P-47 had transitioned from a high-altitude escort, from a ground attack specialist, to the ultimate guarantor of air superiority, the unsung hero that shielded the spearhead of freedom. 13. The Industrial Might, America's Unstoppable Production. While the P-47's inherent design and the evolving tactics of its pilots undoubtedly forged its fearsome reputation, its dominance in the skies over Europe and the Pacific was underpinned by an even more fundamental, almost insurmountable advantage: the sheer, unyielding industrial might of the United States. This was the silent, thundering engine that powered the Thunderbolt's rise, transforming it from a formidable warplane into an unstoppable force.
Germany's war machine, though initially potent, was built on a foundation that could not match the relentless furnace of American democracy. Across the Atlantic, factories churned out P-47s at a dizzying pace, ultimately delivering over 15,600 Thunderbolts, a number that dwarfs the entire production of many Axis aircraft types. Each lost P-47 was swiftly replaced, often by an improved model, ensuring a continuous, overwhelming presence that the Luftwaffe, with its increasingly strained resources, simply could not counter. It wasn't just the aircraft themselves. This industrial juggernaut extended to every facet of the war effort. The Thunderbolt, with its 8.50 caliber machine guns, was a ravenous beast, devouring ammunition at an astonishing rate. Yet, American factories produced billions of rounds, ensuring that every P-47 could unleash its devastating wall of lead without restraint. Fuel, the lifeblood of aerial warfare, flowed in an uninterrupted torrent from American refineries, powering endless sorties, training flights, and the crucial ferry missions that brought new aircraft to the front lines. The logistics were a marvel, a testament to an industrial capacity unmatched by any other nation. Crucially, this industrial power also fueled an unparalleled pilot training program. While German pilot training became increasingly rushed and inadequate, with new recruits facing a brutal life expectancy in combat, the Allies systematically churned out highly skilled, well-trained aviators. These young men, many having logged hundreds of hours in advanced trainers before ever seeing combat, were not just numerous, they were proficient. They learned to master the P-47, exploit its strengths, and survive its challenges, ensuring that the qualitative edge which Germany initially enjoyed was systematically eroded and then reversed. The combination of superior machines, an endless supply of munitions and fuel, and a continuous stream of highly capable pilots created an attrition machine that Germany, despite its ingenuity and fighting spirit, had no hope of overcoming. The P-47 became a flying embodiment of this industrial supremacy, a tangible symbol of America's ability to wage war on an unprecedented scale. 14. From laughter to terror, the German perspective transformed. The initial sneers of April 1943 had long since vanished. The image of the flying milk bottle, once a source of amusement for the seasoned pilots of the Luftwaffe, was now a distant, bitter memory, replaced by a chilling cocktail of profound fear and grudging, almost desperate respect. The P-47 Thunderbolt, the aircraft they had so casually dismissed, had systematically dismantled their arrogance, piece by piece, engagement by engagement. For men like General der Jagdflieger Adolf Galland, who had witnessed the relentless tide of Allied air power firsthand, the P-47 became more than just an aircraft, a potent symbol of an industrial and strategic might they simply could not match. He understood the profound implications of an enemy capable of fielding such a robust, versatile, and numerically superior machine. Galland's post-war reflections would frequently touch upon the sheer, overwhelming quantity and quality of Allied aircraft, with the P-47 standing as a testament to this unstoppable force.
But it was in the cockpits, amidst the desperate dogfights and the terrifying strafing runs, that the transformation from laughter to terror was most acutely felt. Josef Pips Priller, the famed ace who was among the first to engage Allied fighters over Normandy on D-Day, chillingly encapsulated this shift in German perception. He spoke of the early days when they had indeed mocked the P-47, only to later acknowledge that the laughter had died with our comrades. It was a stark, brutal truth. The P-47's 8.50 caliber machine guns, its incredible diving speed, and its unparalleled ruggedness had turned a perceived weakness into an overwhelming advantage. The juggernaut had not merely outfought them, it had psychologically broken them, demonstrating an enduring, brutal efficiency that left no room for contempt, only a harrowing sense of dread. The ultimate psychological victory belonged to the Thunderbolt, an aircraft that had literally bombed and shot its way into the nightmares of the German Air Force. 15. Legacy of the Thunderbolt, a symbol of Allied victory.
From the derision of a flying milk bottle to the terror of the juggernaut, the P-47 Thunderbolt carved an indelible legacy into the annals of World War II. It was more than just another combat aircraft. It was a potent symbol, embodying the very essence of Allied aerial supremacy and the relentless industrial might that ultimately crushed the Axis powers. Its transformation from an ungainly brute to a feared sky beast mirrors the journey of the Allies themselves, overcoming initial setbacks and skepticism to achieve overwhelming dominance. The Thunderbolt became the aerial embodiment of American ingenuity and productive capacity. While other nations struggled to replace losses, the assembly lines across the United States churned out P-47s by the thousands, a seemingly endless tide of steel, firepower, and resolve. Each aircraft that rolled off the line, each .50 caliber round stockpiled, each gallon of fuel delivered, underscored a strategic advantage Germany could never hope to match. This industrial juggernaut was, in its own right, as decisive as any tactical victory. But the P-47's legacy is also deeply intertwined with the resilience and courage of the men who flew it. These were the pilots who mastered its formidable power, turning its perceived bulk into an advantage, exploiting its incredible speed and durability to devastating effect. They pioneered the boom and zoom tactics that capitalized on the Thunderbolt's strengths, and they embraced its dual role, transforming it into a ground attack monster that struck fear into the hearts of German soldiers below. Their tenacity, their willingness to adapt, and their unwavering determination etched the P-47's reputation into history.
Ultimately, the P-47 Thunderbolt stands as a monument to a pivotal era. It is a testament to the belief that sheer power, when wielded with skill and backed by an unmatched industrial foundation, can overcome any challenge. Its roar, once a subject of German mockery, became the sound of their impending defeat, a symbol of the inevitable Allied victory that resonated from the skies of Europe to the islands of the Pacific. The Thunderbolt didn't just fight, it inspired awe, it instilled fear, and it helped fundamentally reshape the course of human history.